So Instax, the cheapest and the most popular instant camera, which turns out to be the biggest disappointment. My Instax Wide lay in a drawer for probably 5 years, until I finally used Instax film in Polaroid Studio Express, and it turned out that the photo was surprisingly good. So what's the problem with Instax? The best way to learn is by watching, so let's go take some pictures.
The best way to learn is by watching. That's why porn is a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Instax lens is f14, so it's as dark as your darkest fantasies. Because the camera is not low-light beast, the Instax film has ISO 800. To make matters worse, we have a shutter that works in the range of 1/64th of a second to 1/200th of a second. So the scope of control over the exposure is quite limited. Why? It's a cloudy day and the light meter indicates the correct exposure at 1/160th for f16. If we convert it for f14, we get a time of 1/200th, so the fastest possible shutter speed in this camera. If we hit a sunnier day, we no longer have any possibility to correct the exposure. The photos will be overexposed, and we are not talking about some extreme conditions here, but about an ordinary holiday photo on a sunny beach. Just to be clear, overexposed photos will not be useless, and up to a point it will probably not even be noticeable, but you must remember that the brighter it is, the exposure will be less and less correct. However, under these conditions, the photos came out quite well. We are in Sopot, Poland, in a seaside resort that is famous for the longest pier on the Baltic Sea and prices that are comparable to those in Spain or Greece. And there is also a 2D cafe here which simulates two-dimensional graphics with its interior and serves quite good coffee. After the break, we continue to explore Sopot with Instax. Lesson 1. Instax Wide has two focus zones, up to 3 meters and over 3 meters. The picture is out of focus because I was in a portrait mode all the time. Instax films have two problems. They are very contrasting and have a very low dynamic range. That's why photos where we have a very bright and at the same time very dark object looked like this. The sky looks quite good, but the building is lost in shadows, and nothing can be done about it. The only way to deal with it is to use a flash. Of course, not in this case. The flash range is limited to 3 meters, so it will only work in a portrait mode. Speaking of flash, there is information about the fill-in mode in the manual. But what works reasonably in Polaroids doesn't quite work in Instax. The flash is probably firing at constant power and the camera is not measuring or controlling it. So that was the last photo. We changed the cartridge to black and white. It's expired, so we'll also check if it affects the quality of the photos. And again, tunnel range. But this photo has a really cool vibe, like from Hitchcock movie. For comparison, this photo was taken practically in the same place, but there is not so much bright sky in the frame, and it looks pretty good. Although it seems that it's still quite bright outside, the camera starts to turn on the flash. And here you can see exactly that the f14 lens, even with ISO 800 film, is quite a big limitation. However, the use of such an aperture is also justified by the construction of the camera. Instax doesn't have autofocus, so f14 is the only way to keep your photos sharp, just like in cheap point and shoots. So I guess it's time to conclude. Film for Instax, despite the fact that it has several disadvantages, is not the biggest problem of the system. The main problem is the camera. If you want to take decent pictures with it, you can't treat it like a classic point-and-shoot camera. And it's not about running around with a light meter all the time. When it comes to photos in strong sunlight, you must remember that due to its contrast, Instax film will deal somehow with the overexposure. When it gets dark outside, you may not be able to take the landscape with it, but when it comes to a photo with friends, the flash will handle it. It may not look perfect, but it's still a $100 camera that was never intended to create artistic shots. I really like instant cameras, there's imperfection, a bit too strong flash, it gives that retro vibe, and that's why these cameras are still so popular. And to just keep some memories, it's perfect.